Viola Davis is back in theaters to conquer the box office with The Woman King. Portraying the nation of Dahomey, we follow a very unique troupe of warriors that are all women and are led by a woman herself. But there's a backlash against the movie, with accusations of sanitizing history and twisting history into a popcorn action movie. In this video, we're going to look into these accusations. Let's begin with 101 on Dahomey. The Kingdom of Dahomey existed from the year 1600 until it was remade into the French Dahomey in 1904. Its territories all existed within the southern part of Benin. You may be hearing about it for the first time, but Dahomey hosted lots of European visitors, hoping to set up trading posts in West Africa. We regret to inform you of the very dark reason why Europe was so interested in Dahomey. If you ever wondered how Africans wound up being trafficked from their homes to being slaves in Western nations, African kingdoms like Dahomey were a big part of the problem. There was a lot of money to be made in the Atlantic slave trade, so African kingdoms were more than happy to kidnap their own people, or those of other kingdoms, and stick them on slave ships. In the movie, Davis plays Nanisca, commander of the all-female military unit called the Agoji. While Nanisca is a fictional character, the Agoji was a real military force, and they were part of the reason why Dahomey Kingdom was such a strong military power in the region. But before you hand out the girl boss badges to the Agoji, you should know that one of their big responsibilities was capturing people to sell into slavery. Dahomey was so dependent on the slave trade that the Western abolition movement triggered the decline of the kingdom. And when Dahomey continued selling slaves to less scrupulous buyers, the British imposed a naval blockade on the kingdom. That's basically where the story of Dahomey ends. Now, you might see why some on the internet have a problem. Let's talk a little about the plot of The Woman King. We'll try not to spoil anything in case you were interested in watching the movie, but you might not be after hearing this. The movie opens with the Agoji, under Nanisca's command, liberating Dahomeyan women from slavers working for the Oyo Empire. This is seen as an act of war, and the king asks the army to prepare for a conflict with the much larger Oyo Empire. Meanwhile, European slavers arrive in the region to help the Oyo in their war against the Agoji. There are some other subplots about a girl who may or may not be Nanisca's daughter, but that's pretty much the gist of the movie. But those are all fictional characters. The only real figure adapted to the movie is King Gizo, who presided over the final great years of the Dahomey Kingdom. A lot of the movie stays accurate to history, as much as a movie like it could be expected to. Gizo's era did see the Agoji become the most important military asset to the kingdom, and the highlight of his reign was ending Dahomey's vassal status to the Oyo Empire by defeating them in war. But the war that forms the backdrop of the movie was about Dahomey's tributes to Oyo, and has nothing to do with slavery. In fact, while Gizo did prohibit the sale of Dahomeyan people as slaves, he also increased abductions from enemy territories, as he considered the slave trade vital to saving the economy. This brings us to the crux of the issue. A lot of the critical backlashes are directed at the historical accuracy of the movie. It wouldn't be fair to call The Woman King inaccurate, because that would mean there was an attempt to be accurate. You can see pretty clearly, though, that the movie is straight up rewriting history. It tries pretty hard to pretend that Dahomey was at worst neutral to the issue of slaves. There's a conversation between Nanisca and Gizo that's meant to acknowledge the fact that Gizo considered diversifying into the palm of oil trade. But the fictional confrontation goes nowhere, just like Dahomey's attempts at selling palm oil. You can tell how the movie ended up this way. While the movie was directed by a black woman, it was produced by a duo of white women, and the screenplay was written by a white woman too. That's not to say the movie was meant to apologize for slavery or Dahomey, but it certainly explains the tone deafness of the movie. Supposedly, producer Maria Bello really wanted to do a movie with Viola Davis. She got the idea for the movie she wanted to do on a trip to Benin, where she learned about the Agoji and got inspired to tell their story. We're thinking she may have slept through the lecture though, since she's got the story all wrong. So you can see that The Woman King was just a movie about how cool an all-female army of would be. Next up, we do, however, agree with Maria Bello on one thing. The story of the Dahomey Kingdom in the Agoge was absolutely worth telling. It's just that Bello failed to see the real value in the story. There's no reason you couldn't make a movie about the real history of Dahomey. In fact, while a lot of anchor behind the history of slaving is rightly directed at the European and American slavers who used slaves, demand and supply are equally important parts of any market. The Woman King could have set the Dahomey Kingdom as an example of African nations participating in the slave trade, though it'd need a different name. The Agoge would be a meaningful part of the story as well. While all slaves suffered terribly under the tyranny of their masters, slavery is a especially awful dimension of slavery that is experienced by women. There's a cruel irony to the cadre of women kidnapping other women so they could be subject to that sort of fate and land millions of miles from home. Since the movie takes place during the reign of King Gizo, while Europe and America were in the process of abolishing slavery, that could provide another cool angle for the movie to explore. We could see Dahomey's financial struggles and the pressure Gizo forced to increase his business with clients, and regime that he's less fond of. You could even work his clashes with the British Empire into the story, as a former slave-buying empire tries to shut Dahomey's business down. Let's not forget that the writer chose instead to create a story from whole cloth. We're left scratching our heads as to why screenwriter Kathy Schulman ignored the actual history of Dahomey, and instead invented a story in which they happened to fight slavers. Could it be because it would be politically incorrect to show Black people selling their own into slavery? Or was it perhaps because Black women killing European slavers looked better in the trailer? Some might say that Viola Davis would never make a movie like this, but we doubt that. She seems exactly the right actress to cast in a prestige drama about a darker side of African history. Now, we do figure that she's an expensive actress to have in your movie, and the version of this story that's true to history doesn't have much box office potential. Our best bet is that someone is looking at the backlash the Woman King is getting and decides to do this story right, because we genuinely love to see it. Hollywood loves rehashing old and successful ideas, so a true story movie about Dahomey will be a terrifying breath of fresh air. With that, only one question remains. Are you a bad person for watching The Woman King? No, but it's important to know what you're getting into when watching a movie like this. Kinda like how you should know that CSI doesn't reflect real police techniques. Actually, a better comparison for The Woman King might be 300. Zack Snyder's breakout success is in many ways the opposite of The Woman King. Yet, we do think that there's a lot in common ground between them. Snyder's Greek myth and Greek history mashup is a hyper-masculine and hyper-violent fantasy story that happens to invoke real events. Sure, there was a group of 300 Spartans that confronted an invading Persian army, but the Persian commander wasn't bedazzled with jewels, and the Persian soldiers weren't monsters. As for the Spartans, they definitely wore more clothes than that in battle. No one seriously thinks that's an accurate portrayal of history. The Woman King is a different kind of wish fulfillment story. We wouldn't blame a Black woman for feeling powerful, seeing Viola Davis stick it to the oppressive authority and its white male collaborators. That sort of thing can be really cathartic for people, and there's value in a movie like it. Emotional catharsis is a big reason why we watch movies in the first place, and people of color could really use it in this day and age. Just remember, it's in no way an accurate portrayal of history. That's it for today's video. Have you watched The Woman King? Do you think it's fine as is, or do you agree that they missed an opportunity to make a better movie? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.